and say that sometimes it's not as complicated as we're making it, right? Yes, we're in a disruptive time part of of being humans on this planet. But there are other animals that have been here a lot longer that have been able to go through a lot of disruption over millennia. And if we just look back at them and learn, perhaps we're going to be able to come up out of this ahead. So
Well, hello, you're very welcome to another episode of Hiring Excellence. My name is Johnny Campbell. I'm going to be your host of the podcast today. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Social Talent. I'm really excited about today's show. It's a different show with a different flow than usual, but we are dealing with some serious topics. And those serious topics all around disruption and change and what we can learn from, let's call it, a surprising source of inspiration. To take us there, I'm really excited to welcome my guest today, who's Judith Rudge. Judith is the VP of Talent Acquisition of an organization known as Optimum. She'll tell you all about Optimum if you've never heard them before in just a sec. And she's joining us from Atlanta today with a wonderful story. Judith, you're very welcome to the show. Thanks really for joining us. You might tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
sure. Thank you again for inviting me. I think, of course, I am in New York City. We're in Long Island City, New York. So if you're somebody that grew up in New York, I am in your city. So really happy to share more about myself. I've been leading talent acquisition for the last 20 years. And most recently in the last year and a half, have been leading TA for Optimum. Optimum Communications, if you're in one of the states that we serve, is pretty common, large broadband company. But we really do deliver some of the best high-speed internet, video, and mobile products in the world. So operate across 21 states. So thank you to all of our customers out there for continuing to allow us to deliver you some just amazing service. I do lead a team of 50 amazing TA professionals. We bring some of the best talent to this company. So everything from the technician that is working on making sure that your service continues to stay fast and reliable to the customer service representatives that you call on the phone. So we do operate a customer service organization that's large to make sure that, connections, everything is done really well and in-house. In addition to that, we also have a pretty large corporate population. So our teams that are based in New York City, which is primarily between Long Island City and Bethpage, New York. The teams that are actually in our Plano, Texas office, think tip to tail from your marketing organization, finance, all the way to HR. And of course, the teams in our engineering organization, which I'd be remiss not to shout out as well. And then across the 21 states, you're of course going to have a tremendous sales force and organization of representatives out there that serve the customers in the actual local fields that they're in. So our team does recruit and work on retaining talent across all of those teams. So a pretty big remit here for us. We serve about a little over 4.5 million customers across the country. And then a big shout out, of course, to some of our agents, because we do have a location in Jamaica that does take calls for us as well, and make sure that our customers have a really great experience. Thank you for asking.
It's not your first rodeo in telecoms, is it, Judith? And you've had a fantastic career in many different organizations. Maybe give us an insight in terms of some of those companies.
Yeah, no,
That you've worked
and
in.
you not a lot of people stay in TA for this long, right? So I've been
Right?
in talent acquisition for at this point 20 plus years. I remember when I came out of undergrad, I said, I just want to be out there meeting people. I want to help people and help them get their first job. Like that was like a thing that I had in my mind. And my first, I tell people all the time, I was like the Geico campus recruiter, the first one. I was in like the gecko, literally in the gecko outfit, the suit, in classes, giving out what we would call then achievement awards. I started out in campus recruiting. And then from there, really learned a lot of the breadth of recruiting at a company called BDO. They're like the 5th largest public accounting advisory org. And I tell people all the time, if you've worked in finance talent acquisition or accounting talent acquisition, you kind of really understand like the pyramid effect of properly building out TA teams in succession. So that was the first 4 years of my career. And then telco's not new, right? So I was at Verizon for 3.5 years, at Comcast for another 4. And all of those experiences really shaped, a career where I've been blending the talent acquisition work with a almost a bit of like talent business partnering, which is what you hear a lot of people talk about now. So most recently, before Optimum, I was at Nike, leading their global remit across consumer marketplace, which of course, anytime we lead a team across a big company, it's good, but leading it across 4 time zones is something else. Like you're, needing to be aware of the regulatory environment in China versus Singapore versus EMEA and the US. So I'm here now, of course, to work in an industry that's going through a lot. There's a lot of market pressure on telecom. And, part of what I love is pulling off the hat trick. So it's part of why I'm here now.
So you might not know this about me, Judith, but to connect some threads, my early recruiting career was as an accountancy recruiter. I recruited
Really?
accountants in industry, and my specialism was telcos when I started off. So when I was recruited in Ireland in my first kind of 8 years, I recruited for every telco here. And
Okay.
telcos were the people to work for. Late 90s, early 90s, they were on fire. They had loads of money. Um, it was a good job. So if you're hiring a qualified accountant, finance manager, management accountant, CFO, whatever, getting into a telco was like really, really cool job. And there was a lot of money being spent, right? My business partner in social talent actually is all telco background as well. He worked
Wow.
in Jamaica for Digicel. You mentioned Jamaica to connect to another third
Yeah.
thread there as well. For many years, so always loved that industry, but it's changed so much. Like I was really talking to somebody recently who was telling me about their new Starlink and the move towards satellite kind of broadband and everything else. So, like, it's gone through a lot of disruption. I imagine through that disruption since you've been there as well. And you are in a profession that's being disrupted heavily as well, right? So TA is being disrupted, telco is being disrupted. Tell me first about maybe the telco disruption. What can
Sure.
folks
And
inside this sector
and
know about it?
and I think it's important to pull back to think like the disruption's been happening a lot longer than we're probably even acknowledging, right? So even pre-COVID, right, there was a moment of shift. I think customers have a very different experience of what they want and expect from who's serving them. And what I literally have this distinct memory. This would have been now about 15 years ago, and I was at an all hands meeting. This is when I was at Verizon. And I remember just being, if you've ever been to a big telco all hands meeting, they're typically like a lot of like really great like production value. The CEO's on a stage, like really getting our energy high and up. And I recall there was like this moment of poignancy in the meeting where he said, there's all of these companies now thinking that they're going to come in here and change the world and disrupt telecom, and we're still the strongest. And the company he was citing was Netflix. And it like blows my mind to think I was in a room 15 years ago when someone said that Netflix, we shouldn't worry at all, right? Little did I know I should have been, buying stock on the side. But we had no idea, right, that someone could consider removing, right, the telco from the relationship with the customer, can build an agnostic relationship that is predictive, right? Because what Netflix really did in the last even 15 to 16 years is get into your home in a different way, predict what you want, and even start to serve you a little bit of what they think you want, right? To change some of those tastes. So I feel like disruption, even in telecom right now, even in the last 2 years, has been all about like market pressure, meeting the customers where they are, being responsive, not creating too many friction points. So if I'm interacting with you on my phone, because of course this thing here, right, is the number one thing that we're all on. I think, yeah, you go everywhere with this.
Mm.
If you're not showing up in the spaces where the customers are, how do you stay relevant? So I feel like that world where we used to have a set top box in the home, and that was what we thought the center of the home was, has shifted dramatically. And to your point about TA, when you think about the HR engine, has always been needing to be at the forefront of the change, right? So if the change is happening in the industry and the business at pace, your TA team needs to be changing faster. Like you are literally right there with your leaders, trying to help them predict what's next and or striving to create what's next,
Mm.
right? So that they could be at the forefront of something. So I'm finding that I can't change, my team and our strategies can't change fast enough. And that's the challenge. And that's the disruption that we are all facing if you're in talent acquisition, let alone if you're in TA and telecom.
Hiring is harder than it's ever been. More roles, more pressure, less time. Cara is Social Talent's AI hiring assistant, built on 15 years of real hiring expertise. She helps your team stay consistent, stay compliant, and handle more without burning out. Cara doesn't replace your recruiters, she makes them better. Find out what Cara can do for your team at socialtalent.com, your hiring partner for the AI era.
So you had come to me a few weeks ago when we sat down to chat about this podcast, and you shared with me a story of where your inspiration came from on how to handle that kind of constant change. In fact, you told me a story about a lesson from or lessons from an unexpected place to me outside your house with a glass of wine, watching watching chickens.
So
Judith, tell me about chickens. Tell me about the chickens. Tell me about
I will
all your chickens and what you learned from them. Because I loved this, and I'm dying for our audience to hear more about it.
so I will emphatically share that I am at this phase in my career where I am in my henopause. Okay. So part of my afternoon delights after finishing my workday was just to sit with a glass of wine and watch the chickens. So some people are surprised when I tell them I have 26 chickens. Yes, I have 26 chickens. I live on a 14-acre ranch in Georgia. And how I even came to get the chickens is this like insane story of a friend of mine relocating. The first 7 chickens basically were going to be sent off. Like we don't even know where they were going to go. And I said, no, I had a empathetic heart. I said, I'll take them. No idea how much work it would take, first of all, to protect them, to feed them, to know. So I went down this rabbit hole of chicken rearing the first 7. And then, of course, the rest, how I got to 26 is a hilarious story as well, because I kept on deciding that I wanted to, what we call in TA, scale the team. And I scaled rather irresponsibly, by the way. Like I just kept buying. But
It's called hyperscaling, Judith. Except you've
hyperscaling, I
hyperscaled your
hyperscaled my
chickens.
team in a year. And I mean, it's interesting because I started to in sitting there, I just watching, and I'm watching behaviors unfold in ways that I thought, that's interesting that I can have the original flock behave so differently when I introduce a new flock. Um, it's interesting watching some breeds just show up very differently, act very differently. And then there's just these breakout chickens that you're just like, you are just a bad chicken. Like you just don't care what I have to do. You can't be locked up. You're not going to lay the eggs in the right place. And a light bulb went off. I said, interestingly enough, what am I learning about like just the team or like groups from watching these animals that have been thriving for, a gazillion years? And that's part of why you were laughing at me, because I was like, yeah, I learned a lot about my TA career from chickens. And you thought this was funny.
I never thought we'd record the Henopause episode. It's a privilege. But genuinely, on a serious note, there are some brilliant lessons and observations. Actually, I've always been a big believer in taking insights from outside your sector or field of expertise. And there's a huge amount to learn from other areas, right? And nature or animals work together. This is an obvious source. But walk me through some of the big kind of learnings. I think it was 3 big learnings you'd share with me that you apply very regularly day to day within your team and your organization.
Yeah. I think team dynamics is big. So I mean, the team that I inherited here at Optimum, right, was already going through a lot of change. So we were in the middle of what I would call a blended team organization. So we had in-house recruiters, we had an RPO that we were onboarding. And then we also then, in addition to that, we're working through helping the business get through a transformation as well from the hiring perspective, and stood up an executive leadership team for recruiting all in the same 6 months.
Mm.
So one thing I learned when I watched, even just the formation of team dynamics and how the chickens interact with each other, was just how the different generations of chickens interacted with each other. So the first 7 they were all reared together as chicks and had grown up together. And when I introduced the first group of chickens, like baby chickens, you like, for people who are not chicken people, you buy them at a store or you buy them from a place that hatches chicken eggs from a farm. And then normally they kind of grow up in generations. And I had this moment of like, okay, so how do I introduce these new chickens to the former group, the current stock flock of chickens? And I remember the first time I did this, I literally put them in a box in the middle of the of my lawn area where I have them, of a pasture. And the new chickens like were terrified. I mean, they were like, just, if you could imagine, first of all, they're half the size of the other ones. So size makes a difference. And then the big chickens came out and were just literally just investigating, like, just who are these people? Like, who are these new people? They need to stay in line. And I thought, interesting. So when you're thinking about onboarding or even in ingesting new talent into your team, how is my TA team truly out there
Mm.
preparing these new people for the environment they're coming in? Like, how are we properly, uh, one, investing in the stories that we're telling, right? To like, this is what this is like here. And then two, how did the different generations or types of chickens actually interact with each other? So the lesson I got there was I need to prepare and invest way more in integration as a TA team. So we literally went back and I went to my talent attraction team and I said, hey, let's redo all of how we talk about the Optimum story. Let's talk about where we are today. Let's not just do the traditional, here's who we sell service to, here's what you're going to do. But then let's talk about this moment in time. What's the pace like here? What's the expectation? What's your persona needing to be like to be happy here? And those were like, that's just a small nugget of like, how does the team dynamic shift and how do you
Mm.
frame it so that you can ingest new talent into the organization and they're successful? Now, I will admit, the lesson I got there though was because at the end I just took the box off. Okay, so that, don't do that, because when I did take the box off, you see big chickens running after little chickens, and of course, I immediately got terrified as the chicken loving mom I was, and I heralded the small chickens back into their their small brooder box, and I said never again. Eventually, I tried it again 2 weeks later when the small chickens got bigger, but they're all living happily in harmony now. But it took a couple of tries. I think industry transformation alongside TA transformation is already hard. But when you're not thinking about like how you integrate the two and how you're mindful and thoughtful about the environment that you're creating, that's when things crash and burn. So it's a small thing to learn from my just integrating my two flocks story, but I just think it's been brilliant for us here.
But I think too often when we're onboarding new folks to the organization, we do just take the box off. We don't think about, to your point, which I love, both sides. Yes, you've got the new chicken arriving in who's terrified and where am I, what's going on? But you've also got the older chickens, the original chickens who've been there for whatever amount of time, thinking, who are these upstarts? What do they want? Are they coming to take my jobs, or what are they here
They
for?
get to lay the eggs now and I take a break? But what's happening?
Yeah, there's socialization required on both sides. There's prepping on both sides to make it work, and it can be super damaging if you get it wrong. I love it. You also shared though, there's something around leadership and some leadership principles you observed over time. In fact, there's a famous phrase from chickens which drives this. But tell us about your leadership lessons from the chickens.
So I was particularly I think I was disturbed initially by this one chicken that was just super aggressive. And I have hens. So most people don't know, like, there's, hens and roosters, male chicken, female chicken. And then where I live, you're not allowed to have roosters because of the noise ordinances. But I was just like, why is this one chicken so like leading the pack? Like
Mm,
everything she does, they follow. When someone's out of line, she quickly course corrects. She also tends to honestly be very protective of the flock. If there's an eagle flying, she's the loudest chicken out there. And I asked my chat GPT, because of course we're all at the forefront of using Gemini now. And I said, hey, what does it mean when there's one chicken that's just super like overly, you know, uh, high end? And they say that's probably the pecking order you're watching
mm,
on chickens. And I thought, okay, so the pecking order, even though it's been like we all say that, it actually is an actual hierarchical behavior that these animals have been developing for years, and that every community of chicken has. There is a chicken that leads the other chickens,
mm,
and I became fascinated by that. So I shifted now to, all right, now they're living in harmony. who's now going to be the new top of the pecking order. And in watching that, it was clear, like I have a photo of myself with one chicken that I then said, you know what, I'm very curious to know if I remove her for, at this point I'm also removing her because she's getting on my nerves. She's literally flying. She's like flying and laying eggs in different places. She refuses to use the brooder box. She goes into the neighbor's yard. The neighbor has a dog, by the way. So I'm already like, why are you, like, of all of the places to go, you want to go to the neighbor's yard? We have 14 acres. You could go anywhere. But so there's a piece of that there where I started to also reframe my mind and think, okay, what happens when you're not intentional about moving the chickens around, right? Because when I
Right.
did remove her from the flock, a new chicken rose to the top. Pray tell. Like I said, oh, wow. So 2 days out of here, they forgot all about you. They just, you're not even, you aren't even a thought. And I found that when I reintroduced her to the group, the behaviors changed. So now that other chicken that did get to show more, ability to lead, ability to just direct where they're finding their food for the day, because they do free range in my pasture, changed the aggressiveness of the original chicken. So she was just like, you know what? This other chicken's got it too. Like, I don't have to be all the time on all the time. And it made me reflect even on how we look at talent management and like how we think through, do you keep going or giving the big project to the same person, right? Because they can handle it, they can do it, they get it done. But sometimes that's potentially stagnating your teams. You may need to remove that person from being in the lead spot to let other people rise and potentially also show you and that leader that is always at the top, hey, other people have it. I often find as well, even with high performers, even on my own team, I have to say, take the PTO. I know it feels like the world is going to fall apart if you are just not here. But if you take the PTO, you may give someone else on the team a chance to really showcase and show up so that we're all feeling equitable and, highly motivated to get the work done in an intentional way. So I think the big lesson I got around pecking order, and I shared this with our talent management team here. I said, we need to move talent around intentionally, but move leaders around. Like, I think that is the one big lesson that I got from that.
Great hiring doesn't just happen, it's a skill. And skills need practice. Social Talent's learning platform gives your recruiters and hiring managers the knowledge to hire with confidence. Expert-led content built for the way people actually work. Whether you're onboarding a new team or upskilling an experienced one, we've got you covered. Visit socialtalent.com/learning to see what your team could learn next.
Do you mind showing us some of the chickens for a second, Judith?
Oh,
I know you've got some photos and some videos. For those of you listening, I'll do my best to describe this if you can't
Oh my
see
gosh,
the video.
yes. Let
Let's have a
me
look.
go to this. This is it. So I have a whole bunch of photos, which, you would think that my phone would be full of them right now, but it's mainly because I love on my Facebook story. So I have a whole bunch of photos of me with them. This on the right over here is Carmen, the chicken that I call the bad chicken. But this right here is a video of the different breeds of chicken. So I have Golden Wyandettes. The reddish ones here are Rhode Island Reds. And then these are the Brahmas. And you can see that small chicken right there. Did you see it? It got pecked by one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Because it's basically saying, get out of the way. You're not first in line to eat. Move. Go. And then, of course, they would call me, I guess I'm their mother hen to some extent. So they're just following along, looking to see, hey, where's she going? Is she going to feed us? No, she's probably not feeding us. Small chickens, get out of the way, please.
I love this. It's
So
like the
it's just a
small
little
ones are
bit there.
your early
And
in
of course,
career chickens.
they are. And then, they randomly break into parts of the property. So chickens mirror each other. So they teach each other behaviors. So this is them mirroring each other. I think this was teaching that one how to potentially find worms. If I could speak chicken,
These are two almost identical chickens. Just look like you're about to have a fight, Judith.
They were not. They were in a friendly moment. It's funny. It actually is pretty funny. They were having a like friendly moment together then. I learned now to let them be, meaning initially I would be like the person that'd be jumping in, and I've now learned to just let them sort it all out and they'll figure it out. It's a good lesson even with my own team. I used to
You
be a
mentioned,
leader that would be so overly um afraid of conflict on the
uh,
team or friction. And now I'm just like, you know what? You have the tools.
hmm?
You've figured out more difficult moments as a team together. So I'm going to leave it alone. Please come to me if something completely goes off the rails.
Well, that's a good bridge to maybe the last of the three lessons, which brings in Carmen San Diego, and it's that disruption and tension, and stepping out of line actually are not just sometimes positive; they're arguably necessary
Yes.
in an environment to change. So, well, first of all, let's go back and talk about Carmen San Diego. Where does that name come from for our audience who may not be familiar with your TV upbringing, Judith?
So I used to love that, like, where is the world is Carmen San Diego. I'm from another part of the world as well. I'm from Suriname, South America, and it was one of my favorite ways of learning about, the globe. So Carmen San Diego, Google it if you don't know what it is. Um, my chicken is one of those chickens where I have no idea where she is most of the time because she somehow is the only chicken that knows how to get out of the coop that I've built to keep them all safe. Safety is not her primary concern.
Mm.
Um, she's kind of reframed my behavior thought about disruption. And here's why. My initial thoughts about this was like, this is just the one bad chicken. Like, I just have a bad chicken and I need to figure out how to get rid of her. And getting rid of a chicken, as you all know, everybody loves chicken. There's really only multiple. There's only a couple options. You know what I mean? Like, going to freezer camp, something else is happening. But that's not, after I thought about it. And here's what my thoughts changed. She's still also the chicken that when there's danger, she's the loudest chicken I have. I know
Yep.
that there's an eagle or a fox or something close. So there's something about this chicken that, even though she's disruptive in my perception of her behavior, that has reframed my ability to say, you know what, she's going to let me know when there's danger and when I should be worried about the flock. She's also the chicken, literally 2 days ago, they ran out of water. It's extremely humid and hot right now in Georgia. I see this chicken on the porch. I'm like, why are you on the porch? The Ring cameras are going off. So I'm thinking something's wrong and they can't communicate with you, right? And I go to the back, they've run out of water and I don't know how long they haven't had water. But I have to believe, right, that there's something in this chicken's drive to free range and their autonomy that has allowed her to lead in a way that allows me to understand what's going
Mm.
on back there. So for me, when I think about how I'm driving innovation and speed and how I designed a strategy for the TA team, you know, it's okay to have a disruptive leader that you bring into the organization. It's all right. I'm now honestly pushing a lot of my leaders when we do calibrations on bringing in directors, senior directors. Is it okay to hire someone that has the exact same telecom career as yours or comes from similar industries? Or is this the moment that we bring in someone that comes from a completely different industry, that's been disruptive in their career, that maybe rose to the top quickly, and that is not going to always be the fun person to work around, but it's going to disrupt and innovate quickly. And I feel like there's a push and a pull there, right? And in my scenario, when I'm in raising a flock of chicken, I've learned, you know, it's okay to move talent around, but it's also okay to ingest talent that's so different and that is not going to conform to your culture. And look at that as an investment in your
Mm.
environment. Like
Mm.
maybe you're creating a diversity that you're not even aware of. And it's not the diversity, I think, the sort of the top line diversity that most people think about, but it's the diversity of thinking, of being, of doing. And I think it's so tantamount. If we're trying to innovate and keep up with the disruption, you have to bring in disruptive players. You need to make that investment in your team.
On that innovation piece, you shared a story that I'd love you to retell, Judith, around how you and your team, in fact, one of your team, is thinking about the relationship between your candidates and your customers, which is different in telco or in other consumer businesses than perhaps other sectors. But walk us through the idea, where it came from, and some of its potential.
Yeah. So I challenged my team. I said, hey, we have, when you're in telco or any business where you're really trying to win the customer in a hyper competitive environment, how are we delighting people? If
Mm.
if our website as a TA careers page is getting, tens of thousands of connections or touches because people want to look at jobs, what other ways can we also make that connection and that delight moment, right? So in our case, the team immediately started brainstorming about, all right, we already have an AI chatbot that's scheduling interviews, that's interacting with candidates. But those exact candidates are in our customer base and in our markets. So if we just leave that connection and we don't connect it in some way to the
Mm.
customer experience, then it's a missed touch. It's a missed opportunity. So the team literally started reaching out to our engineering organization here and saying, hey, is there a natural handoff that our AI bot can make to the one that's on the customer service side to say, hey, thank you for applying. And here's the process for getting through our talent acquisition experience. And if you are a customer, thank you for being one. And here's a natural handoff to the other bot that can help you if you're having any issues, if you would like to subscribe, or if you just want to engage with our product. So that was, I thought, just brilliant. I mean, I
Mm.
could have never, like in a meeting, been having these thoughts about how our TA chatbot could positively impact the sales or the customer experience for Optimum. And then finally, I mean, an experience that I thought was just amazing. I think when you're in the environment they were in, sometimes you lose sight of, if you're on a TA side, you lose sight of what the people out there are actually doing. So I've
Mm.
encouraged my team. I said, spend time in the field, either with our retail sales associates or out there with our event managers. And how do you integrate both? Like, how do you create an experience as a TA team? They're like, we should just start to go with them to all of these basketball games they go to talk to people about. And I'm like, at first I thought, okay, you're just trying to go do something fun, but no, they're like, no, we can have a QR code up,
Mm.
we can review resumes, like so. I'm finding that in this world of disruption and innovation, if you ask your team to come up with the idea, they will.
Mm.
You can come up with them yourself and then create a strategy and then roll out the strategy, so to speak. Or you can say, which is the challenge I've made for my team for next month. I said, I want to make 30 AI prompts for TA, but I want them all to come from you guys.
Mm.
And now we have everybody off the races just coming up with use cases where they're using, we use Copilot as a company, but there are multiple AI tools that are available to us now that could have really just fantastic use
I agree.
cases in
I
talent
agree.
acquisition.
I love that, Judith. It sounds to me that this experience of being mother hen and your henopause, as you called it, has just been an unlock in your professional life. How long have you had the chickens again? Remind me.
It's a little over 2.5 years now.
Wow. Wow. In only 2.5 years, the expertise has extended. So maybe remind us then of your kind of top takeaways and lessons that the chickens have taught you as a leader and taught you about talent management, talent development, talent acquisition.
I'm going to keep it very simple. And it's like, put the eggs in the basket. Like, that's the simplest way I could say it. Like, your company right now needs you to innovate or needs you to think faster or move faster. How are you actually going to do that, right? What environment are you going to create? For me, it was about making sure that the talent I brought here knew what they were getting themselves into. It also meant that I was pushing my leaders to think differently about like who they bring in and why they bring them in. And maybe it's good to not hire the exact profile like your own. And then when I say put eggs in the basket, I really mean like, do you have the right investments and environment in your place so that you're getting the outcome, right? So my leaders expect me to bring in great hires because they need the outcome. They need the leapfrog moment of that talent to do really great things. And if you're in talent acquisition and if you stayed in talent acquisition, that's why you do this stuff. You love winning. Like, I mean, I don't know anybody in TA that doesn't love winning. So I think that's the part that is probably the biggest lesson I've gotten out of it. And then investing in people is a unique thing, right? I feel like we all go to bed at night hopeful that we've done good work. And if you're in TA, generally you feel that way. So I feel like that is that's been the gift in my chicken raising, and that I've been able to look at something very simple, something that relaxes me quite a bit, honestly. And say that sometimes it's not as complicated as we're making it, right? Yes, we're in a disruptive time part of of being humans on this planet. But there are other animals that have been here a lot longer, that have been able to go through a lot of disruption over millennia. And if we just look back at them and learn, perhaps we're going to be able to come up out of this ahead. So for me, that's probably the biggest piece there. And then I'll challenge your audience back a bit if it's possible.
Please.
What is your culture's pecking order? Figure that out. Like, what are the things that maybe you should look at? Like, what else, are you creating the right environment? Have you moved enough leaders around to unlock what you need to unlock in the leaders that you have in the rest of the team? So that's my call out.
Judith, it's been so refreshing not to hear how AI has inspired somebody, but how chickens have inspired somebody to do something even better with great insights. I think you're the common denominator, Judith, with great insights. We're going to put together a little pack that folks can download from this podcast. There's a link below in the show notes and the description, which gives a summary of Judith's stories and lessons, but also some photos and videos of her wonderful chickens, all 26 of them, including, of course, Carmen Santiago.
Ooh.
Judith, it's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show this week. Thank you for bringing a little bit of humor with a serious topic and some brilliant insights to our audience. I'm dying to have you back to see what the next generation of chickens teaches you.
Thank you. Of course, I appreciate you, Johnny.
And thank you for listening and joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully that gave you a smile on your face, but also plenty of lessons to bring back to your team. We'll be back next week with another great episode of Hiring Excellence. Until then, take care.